Welcome to the Black Writers Studio, a podcast presented by the Hurston Wright Foundation and hosted by Dr. Khadijah Ali Coleman. The Black Writers Studio is dedicated to showcasing Black writers who are transforming the world today with their literary pen and creating a legacy for the culture. Sheree Renée Thomas is an award-winning fiction writer, poet, and editor. Her work is inspired by myth and folklore, natural science, and the Mississippi Delta conjure. 9-Bar Blues, Stories from an Ancient Future is her fiction debut. She is also the author of the novel Marvel's Black Panther, Panther's Rage, an adaptation of the legendary comics. She is the author of 2 multigenre hybrid collections, Sleeping Under the Tree of Life, longlisted for the 2016 Otherwise Award, and honored with the Publishers Weekly Starred Review, and Shotgun Lullabies. She edited the 2-time World Fantasy winning, groundbreaking Black speculative fiction anthologies, Dark Matter, and is the first to introduce W.E.B. Du Bois' science fiction short stories. Her work is widely anthologized and appears in the Big Book of Modern Fantasy, edited by Ann and Jeff VanderMeer. She is the associate editor of the historic Black arts literary journal Obsidian. She was recently honored as a 2022 Hugo Award, Ember Award, Locus Award Finalist, a 2020 and 2022 World Fantasy Award Finalist in the Special Award. So I wanted to jump right in. So you had a fiction debut in 2020 with 9-Bar Blues, which is behind you, right? Yes. And so then you became part of the Marvel family in 2022 as a writer of the novel Black Panther, Black Panther's Rage. You've been an associate editor with Obsidian Literary Journey, and you're a recent recipient of a Hugo Award. So to me,
Oh, no, I didn't win it.
okay, but you are a
Nominated.
finalist.
I'm a finalist, yeah, which is an amazing thing. I never really imagined that before editing the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. So it was a finalist twice. So that was pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yes, like that's super amazing. And look, I just want our listeners, our listeners to know that that's the short list of what I'm mentioning. Okay, so these are all things that I snatched from your bio so I could ask this question, because to me, it looks like your writing career it's like a whirlwind. It's this it would within the last 5 years, it seems like all of these things just converged on you, and like you are in this whirlwind, and that's what it seems like from the outside looking in. Can you tell me a little bit about right now? I don't know if you expect me to ask this question, but how do you feel? Like what are you feeling right now? Where are you right now in terms of your career? How does it feel? And how do you look at your writerly success and the movement that you've been a part of right now?
Mm. It feels like a 30-year overnight story. So it may seem like it just kind of blossomed. But as many of us in the arts have been doing, we've been working for a long time. And I feel fortunate. Sometimes I do question my decision to to labor in the fields of speculative fiction, but it's where my spirit naturally is drawn. It's where my roots are, deeply in that fertile soil, and where my imagination goes naturally. So I've been very fortunate to be able to live my life as an artist, to work in a community of the word, to be around kindred spirits who not only love storytelling and fiction, but also poetry, to be around filmmakers, and to edit, which allowed me to be able to carve out space for my own writing. So it has been a long time coming. And as I was telling somebody recently, I know I've been ready for a while. So the past 5 years is like a blessing or answered, for sure, especially at a very kind of frightening time, because to me, I was looking forward to Tonight Bar Blues coming out for, my, 2020 for the debut. And with Third Man Books is my publisher, Chet. And we had all these great plans. We were going to London. I was going to be on the punk scene at the club,
Wow.
we were doing, because my whole book is, inspired by music, Black music, right? And of course, we were at the forefront of punk music. And I found out not too long ago that Tina Bell was the sister who started off the whole grunge scene in Seattle. Yes, a Black woman as well.
Wow.
So it's like all these amazing things. And of course, the world was dealing with an international pandemic. And so that time period was one of trying to revisit and figure out how a book launch is going to happen when we're trying to stay alive on the planet, right? So but we worked through it, and out of that I realized that other artists were also planting seeds and creating as well. And so I was fortunate enough to be invited to work on some amazing projects during that era. And of course we were still very much protesting and continuing our fight for dignity and human rights and citizenship in America in the 21st century with George Floyd, which is a continuation of all the other citizens who lost their lives unjustly. And so I had mixed feelings, right? And out of that, comes art. We write, we create, we try to make sense of things that don't make sense and try to make the impossible more possible. So that's how I feel about it. I feel like I've been working very hard a long time. It was interesting to see all the different ways that artists were trying to communicate with each other and with the community in that moment. So
yeah, I appreciate you saying that and giving context. And as you were speaking, it reminds me of the meme that everyone has had to have seen at some point, where it's the person or it's showing a like success where it's above the water, but the parts of the rock or whatever that's under the water line is all of the work and the energy that got you to being above water, where now you're visible and everyone sees you. And a lot of people don't know what that behind the scenes work looks like. They don't know what folks have put in to get to be prominent or forward facing in the work that they do as artists. Can you give us a little bit, even when we talk about being an associate editor of Obsidian Literary magazine, which I want to give a shout out to. It's a sister publication, part of the Getting Word collective, where there are 5 literary organizations. Hurston Wright is honored and pleased to be part of this collective that includes Cave Canem, The Watering Hole, Obsidian, Furious Flower. And so tell me about this work that you've done with Obsidian and how it could, because that seems to be something that you've been doing consistently. Tell us, tell us about that work and how you're managing to do that, as well as all the work that you're doing with Marvel and with your own publications.
So Obsidian is something that's so important to my heart as a writer. It was one of the and it's a publishing platform, and shout out to our fearless and amazing and creative editor-in-chief, Duriel Harris. I mean, they are, they're the truth. They're the truth. But it was one of the literary journals that I saw on the shelf in my library in Memphis when I was growing up. So I remember seeing Obsidian. I remember seeing Callaloo, of course. I think Drum Voices Review as well, Black Scholar, like all these publications, African American Review. And when you're reading legacy piece, journals like that, you are introduced to some of the most amazing writers in our canon, in the field. And you get a sense of the history and the generations that they are connected to. And you want to be a part of it. I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to have, my stories or poems published in those journals. And so to see that was something that was out there, and it wasn't just, Zora Neale Hurston a long time ago in Crisis magazine, but also that legacy was continued with these other publications, was important to me. Fast forward, I'm sending out poems, I'm sending out things, and they're being rejected, obviously. And the thing that was really wonderful is the founder of Obsidian, Alvin Aubert, was so kind to send personalized rejections. After a while, I started getting personalized rejections. I didn't get them right away. And he would, give me, tips and some support on things that I didn't know, because I didn't formally study writing. I didn't formally study poetry. And
what did you study? What did you study?
I was a history major, an anthropology minor. And my first publication was it might've been in high school for like the contest stuff, but the writing Olympics and things like that. But my first publication was in college, and that was because an English professor of mine read an essay I had written and just said, why aren't you an English major? Why aren't you publishing? You need to be, contribute to the school newspaper. You need to be doing something else.
Wow. So you really literally were in the footsteps of Zora. You brought her name to fore. So you were anthropology like her. Okay. I didn't mean to interrupt, because I'm loving this story. I mean, but that's important for us to know, is that you went to school for something different than. Okay.
And it also was in a community in Memphis, as a music city, right? It's a music city, crossroads of all kinds of music. Zora Neale Hurston lived in Memphis at some point. And there are all these great writers that have history and roots in Memphis. But the community of writers, of Black writers, and I'm thinking of Arthur Flowers and the late Reginald Martin and Mira DeCosta Willis, who of course did the Ida B. Wells diary.
I took classes with her, by the way, at UMBC. I love Dr. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I have these amazing people.
Yeah, she was from Memphis. That's right.
Who are very generous, I might say. So in the writing groups that were happening in Memphis, and the one that I was aware of was the Griot workshop from Arthur Flowers, who's retired, of course, from teaching in the MFA program at Syracuse University. He had newbies like me, and he had veterans all alike together. And when you're there listening to these great writers and listening to him, you realize that writers write. And so you would have people who were novelists or who were writing plays, but they also would write screenplays, or they would have poems, or there would be quilters, or there would be photographers. They were artists. Right. And so they followed their muses, but they wrote it in the forms in which those particular stories and poems demanded to be written in. Yes. They did not feel that they needed permission from anybody to be a writer, but they wanted to focus on craft. Yes. They wanted to focus on excellence. And they were pretty, very, very strong critiquers, in that sense. So I learned a great deal in those circles. And one of the things that I learned is that writers write. And so I didn't necessarily feel like I had to be in an MFA program, or I had to have a certain kind of anointing from a particular group in order to be a writer, because when I looked on my shelves, the writers that I loved, most of them were not a part of those kinds of programs. It wasn't a business at that time.
That's right. Yeah. So bring us back to Obsidian. So you're applying now without, and you are building this writerly life without permission. You're applying to journals, you're getting these handwritten notes from Obsidian, that is wild to me. That is so beautiful. Yeah. And it's not only handwritten notes, but tips on
the manuscript. Like, here, about punctuation, which I could not figure out, and still need support with that, and all kinds of things. And that gave me encouragement to keep submitting. And mind you, my day job was working in publishing. I was working at Random House, and I moonlighted at a science fiction bookstore, Forbidden Planet. Wow. So, and I was raising children. I was raising my children. So I was doing all the things. And but that encouragement really helped me keep sending work until I was finally published in Obsidian. And I was also able to successfully get published in some of the other publications that I love so much from my youth, from my coming of age and everything. So that was important. So when Duriel tapped me in 2015, I think I was a writer in residence at Smith College, teaching the Marvelous Real, which is a magical realism workshop, which I love. And diving into that work, she'd asked me to guest edit a special volume on the Black imagination, on our radical imagining and speculative fiction. And I just thought, oh, this would be amazing. What an honor to not only work with Duriel, who was like a fellow Cave Canem fellow, but also to go home, to Obsidian, a place that had really helped me feel my well and really develop my craft and my stamina, the endurance that you need to be a writer and to take all the no's along with the yeses, right? And so I tapped Nisi Shaw to help guest edit the fiction, and Dr. Isaiah Lavender III to help academic work. And of course, it was an amazing experience, right?
So you didn't play. You started with the big guns.
Oh yeah, I got Stacey Robinson to do our cover, because I was like, and they were gonna do it in black and white. I was like, nah, this got to be. I mean, the Afrofuture's in color, baby. Right. We're in color.
Right. Oh my goodness.
And it just, everything popped. Everything was pretty amazing. I got to work with writers that were unfamiliar to me. Some of them are new, who are now like amazing Los Angeles Times, finalist writers, and writing for Star Wars, and their novels are like the novel of their community at this time. They're like doing amazing things, right? I'll just say that. And so that was great, and work with people I love and admire for many years. And so it was a mix of this is the thing that you love as an editor, of working with new writers and introducing them to readers, and working with people that you respect and admire, and just kind of putting it all together, and giving people some roses whose roses they deserve. They well deserve. I will say that. And from that, I also got to work with Dr. Ronaldo Anderson, who, Ofalandra Nelson, to me were the people who were who lifted up and carried on the tradition of Afrofuturism, who made it a tradition in the literary form, as we know it.
So that is a good starting point to ask about your work in particular. You have on your bio where you describe your work as being inspired by myth and folklore, natural science, and Mississippi Delta conjure. I would love for you to share with me and our listeners about this inspiration and what you mean specifically when you speak of this myth and folklore. I don't want to make any assumptions as to what you're talking about, and then if that can include just broadening our understanding of this Mississippi conjure.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess it goes back to like my origin story of hearing Hank tales from my grandfather and his neighbors, who would come and tell us scary stories sometimes in conversation. And some of those stories were true, like they're actual historic things that happened, or things that they experienced or witnessed, growing up in West Tennessee and in Mississippi. And those were sometimes scarier than the ghost tales, right? But it's this ideal that Black culture has a connection to Africa, has a connection, and that we in America, particularly Black people who are descendants of the enslaved Africans, we still maintain some of those mythologies and some of that folklore, and it's hidden in plain sight. And as I was growing up, and especially discovering the work of Zora Neale Hurston and seeing the memory keeping and archiving that she was doing across the country, it helped me to see things that I didn't recognize as a young person in a different light. And I realized, I may have this Catholic grandmother, and I may have this, hard pew Baptist grandmother, right? But they're somehow doing the same things, and none of them seem to be specifically connected to the Bible, that as far as I'm aware of. So what's happening here?
Yes.
What are we doing? Why are we doing these traditions? Where did they come from?
Yes.
And so that's the kind of folkloric and spiritual traditions that I began to explore and recognize. And I also was pushing back against this ideal that we didn't have our own mythologies, and that we didn't have our own folklore, that we didn't have a culture. In fact, that's like a recurring question that's so bizarre to me, because our culture is the thing that's most uniquely known as American around the world. The things that you call American music is often the innovations that we created, right? It's the music that we created. And I think about the excavation that even Beyonce is doing now with the Country Carter album, taking us back to the Black and possibly Latino roots of country music, right? So the myth and folklore comes from Black Southern traditions and Black Southern dialect, our mother tongues, which is rooted in so many different lands, right? So many different nations. And that's
I wonder if people, has anyone ever told you that you to me embody, if Zora were still alive, what she would probably be into? I know for a fact that she would be into everything that you said, just from looking at her anthropological work and study on voodoo and
hoodoo.
Haiti. Yeah, all of the things that she, and even the things that she wrote about that didn't really receive prominent it wasn't prominently placed as, her book, The Eyes of Watching God and things like that. But in her essays, you articulated so many things that just seem familiar to me when I've read her work, and consider where would she be or what would she be interested in now. And it just seems like you really are following in the tradition. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but it just resonates with me that you definitely are, following the tradition.
Thank you. That's quite an honor, because she lived beyond her time, her work. And thank God for Alice Walker for reaching back and pulling those beats off that grave and helping us to remember that she was here.
Definitely.
And all of her work is coming full circle. I keep thinking, I saw a documentary about Questlove, and the Descendants, his Descendants documentary. Of the
that's what it's called, Descendant, on Netflix.
Africa Town. And that was very important for a project I just completed, research I was doing on Africa Town, and to find out that he has lineage connected to the last, at that time, he Cudjo Lewis was considered the last living survivor of the Clotilda slave that illegally, kidnapped him and 100 other people.
Who she interviewed for the book Barracoon.
And she interviewed him. And to see that research that she did and that voice that she recorded for us and the film that she made on it, all of that's coming full circle today. It's amazing to me. So yeah, when I think about the Mississippi Delta conjure and hoodoo tradition and everything, I'm thinking of Black genius. That's the one I'm thinking of, the things that get maligned sometimes and marketed. Hoodoo, you have to sift through all the foolishness that's out there to sell potions and things like that. And as Arthur Flowers has said, we neo hoodoo, like Ishmael Reed, we're moving beyond black cat bones and things like that. This is about being a salve to your people. It's about healing, right? It's being that space, that safe haven, for your psychic health, for your spiritual health and your physical health, and remembering your ancestors in ways that honor them and you. So I try to put those traditions in my work, even in the science fiction.
That is fantastic. I told you that before we got started offline, I told you that my last question was going to be about your thoughts on the popularity of Afrofuturism, but I'm going to change that to you just listening to you speak and getting excited and wanting to say amen and hallelujah, but that's not appropriate right now. What's on the horizon for you? I could easily see you with a podcast, with some type of forum or platform where you are talking about this very thing, or educating. What's on the horizon for you? What will we be seeing next?
Well, I'm always editing. So I'm editing the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. There's some great writers that looking forward to seeing in the world. So that's always interesting. Of course, we're carrying on with soon we'll have like the 50th um, um, 50th anniversary
That's
of
insane.
Obsidian.
Wow.
Where the 75th for the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, and the 50th for Obsidian. So that's coming up. I just had my comic book debut for Marvel.
Yes.
It was so exciting to come
Yes.
out. So it was a part of a comic book anthology called Marvel's Voices, Legends #1.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was so like my child self was like,
yes.
I got a chance to do, I wrote a story called The World Is Not Ready. And it features the Black Panther and Storm, because we're all about Black love in the Afro future. So, and I got a chance to introduce some new characters, as I did with the novel, Panther's Rage. So
that has to feel so good. Yeah. Yes.
And I have a new collection that should be coming out in the world, called Roots to Touch Sky. So there's things that we're doing.
Yeah. When would that be out? Is that going to make it? Okay.
That's
I got you. All right. It's gestating. It's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am so excited to have met you, to be in conversation with you. Where would you like folks to connect with you online, and to also to pick up your work? Is there any space in particular you would like folks to visit to purchase your work?
Yes, they can visit ShereeReneeThomas.com. Just my website. I always would love for people to support independent bookstores. If you can, that would be amazing. Those are the things that hold us and keep us through. So definitely go to bookshop.org and support. If you can't physically support a bookstore in your community, then bookshop.org is an amazing space to go. And African American Literature Book Club is another great space.
Yes, our friend Troy Johnson. Yes. All
Yeah.
right. Well, online, is there any social media platform where you're more active that you would love to connect with folks, or the website is really the entry point that you would prefer?
Laughing at Sheree Thomas. I still have minimal presence on X, just because the book community for science fiction is mostly on Twitter, and Facebook is under my name as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.